This conference will now be recorded.
Ooh, okay. I have 1:30, so I'll go ahead and call us to order. Let the record reflect that all 5 city commissioners, Airport Advisory Commission members are present. And at this point, I will entertain a motion on the agenda.
Move to approve the agenda.
I have a motion to approve the agenda as presented by Commissioner Powell and a second by Commissioner McDonald. Any discussion or debate on the proposed agenda? Hearing none, I'll ask for a voice vote. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Hearing none, passes 5-0. I will now entertain a motion on the minutes from the Thursday, June 17th, 2021 meeting.
So moved.
I have a motion by Commissioner Espiritu to approve the minutes as presented and a second
I'll second.
by Commissioner Call.
There's only 5 of us. We have to share the responsibility.
That's true. That's true. Lord knows I can't do it. I don't have a vote. Oh, wait, yeah, I do. I'm sorry. Any discussion or debate on the minutes? All right, I'll ask for a voice vote. A yes or aye approves the minutes as presented. A no or nay rejects them. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say nay. Hearing none, seeing none, passes 5-0. All right, for the record, I got notified yesterday, that we had an unexpected visit from TSA, 9 investigators, whatever they are. They have commandeered, so to speak, the conference room, which is why we're up here. They're doing an exit review with Mr. Stark and Mr. Christopher. So that's why we're going to be in the capable hands of Ms. Garcia today. And without further ado, Ms. Garcia.
Thank you. Welcome to the Airport Advisory Commission. Today is Thursday, July 15th, 2021.
All right, we got all that.
Call to order by presiding officer, the roll call and determination of quorum, approval of the agenda, approval of the minutes from the Airport Advisory Commission of June 17th, 2021. Non-action items. Air Center Director Status Report, item number 5, Scott Stark. I put a note on there. June's information will be reported on July's report. As you know, we are down 2 staff people, so we didn't have the information for the June. Oops. Sorry about that.
It's okay.
The June's information on the passenger and the schedule. So that will be reported next month. Operations, the same thing. The information will be reported on July's report. Revenues, the same thing. June's information will be reported on July's report.
Well, while we're in here, the 2 positions, if I'm not mistaken, are the one that Mr. Massey was in.
Correct.
And then
The administrative senior position.
and I understand that someone was selected for that position.
Yes, she starts tomorrow.
Okay.
I think I can say her name, but Lisa Bennett will be starting with us tomorrow at the Air Center.
Transfer from
Parks and Rec.
Parks and Rec, yeah. Okay. Just so you guys know, Scott and Steve had told me about this, so it's just a little tight right now. So sorry for the interruption. Yes, ma'am.
Can I ask, I'm sorry, what positions are these?
Well, I'm not sure what the Massey's official position was.
His position is airport facility supervisor.
Yeah.
He was the supervisor for the maintenance guys out at the Air Center. It's been 2 weeks, and Lorraine has been also gone 2 weeks. So it's been a little tight.
She-
What's
she new?
what's Lorraine's position?
I'm sorry,
Who is Lorraine? I'm sorry, what position?
the administrative assistant senior at the airport. Correct. Lisa worked at the Air Center last year for about 3 or 4 months during COVID.
Yeah.
So it's a good fit.
It's that position at the front desk.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, the Air Center Deputy Director report, item number 6, Steve Christopher. Projects. Survey for Ascent hangars has begun and will be completed on Thursday, July 15th, 2021. Survey will be discussed at the August 19th AAC meeting.
Wow, that's today.
It is,
Today is when they will be finished with the survey. Okay.
yes.
And
Go ahead.
what survey is that?
This is the site, this
Is
is
it
part,
for the site plan?
yes, to identify what the orientation would be, where things would go. And I believe, I'm not going to hold anybody to this, I think it's also to help identify where the water, the sewer, the power lines are, so that those will be identified for relocation if necessary.
Mr. Chairman, I spoke with Dave Carroll yesterday.
Okay, cool.
Just to give you an update, he's working with a local firm to have an ESA and geotech survey done. That's why I asked what survey. So that's in the very infancy. He's looking to get moving on that.
As opposed to Armstrong?
Well, Armstrong can't do that.
Oh.
So it needs to be a civil engineer firm to do the environmental study as well as the geotech borings for the soil.
And what's the term that they use when there's no environmental or historical stuff? You know what I mean? It's the, what is that? Yeah, where there's no impact. I can't remember what the term is.
Yeah, I've seen it too. I don't remember what it is.
All right, I'm sorry, Denise. That's okay. Right, we get distracted here. It's okay. It's less formal than the city council. Thank the Lord.
Well, the most important thing is a sense paying for that. So they're taking care of that on their own.
Okay.
Coordinate with the, for the piece when we get into this construction bidding.
Gotcha. Yeah.
And these surveys that they're doing, we don't have any of those done for any of the potential sites?
No.
That'd be something we'd want to look at having.
My understanding is this is a lot more detailed than the general airport type mapping that was done a gazillion years ago. So that this is actually identify exactly what's where.
Yeah, Ascent's doing it so they're not liable for anything that's in the ground.
Yeah, but right now it's also like there's like an old foundation for at least one hangar, if I'm not mistaken, out there. And there's the fuel tank farm, and we have to take into account as well. But exactly where everything is in relationship to the roads and the streets and everything else.
Yeah, I was talking about the Ascent survey.
Oh, Ascent survey. Yeah. That's to find out what the dirt's like underneath, if I'm not mistaken.
That's correct. The geotech is for the dirt.
Yeah, they don't want to build on a sinkhole.
Correct.
And the ESA, the environmental survey is for,
Those could take 6 months.
contaminants and, pardon me?
Those could take a while.
It depends. If they find something, it can take quite a while. So it's a phase 1 ESA and versus phase 2. So it's preliminary.
Okay.
No action taken, just identification in the phase 1.
And that way they'll know that it was there before they got there.
Creates a baseline for them.
Yeah.
And for us and for the city, protects the city.
And if I'm not mistaken, phase 1 is isn't it just a records check?
Yeah, they don't typically go out and do a review. They'll review
They don't
records.
bore or anything.
No, that's a geotech. That is borings. That's a separate.
Okay, and you were saying?
But there was, to answer your question, if I may, Mr.
Sure.
Chairman, there was the Corps of Engineers did conduct a complete environmental assessment of the majority of the center. But it's pretty old, so there's a lot of questions about that. Scott has a copy of that. And I reviewed it as well, because we are also working on a project out there, and it's costing us about $20,000.
The EDC.
Yes, sir. Excuse me.
Okay.
Okay, moving on. Air Center Property Manager Status Report,
There you
item number 7, Denise Garcia. So The Air Center, we're assessing structural and mechanical assessment projects at this time. We're planning to perform the structural assessments to determine the viability and life of the buildings. These assessments will give us the information to see if they're worth the investment to retain, repair, or replace. They will also be performed to ensure the structures meet all applicable building codes related to structural integrity. The assessments will look for signs of potential structural issues or problems with building maintenance that could lead to failures in the areas below, which are building exterior, interior structure, fire safety, plumbing and piping, electrical panels, and wiring, heating, and HVAC systems.
Building 112 has recently come up with mold identified on that. And I know that that's currently occupied by Air Sale. And there's, I don't know if there's been final discussion on this, but it looks like, if I'm not mistaken, that building will have to be evacuated and possibly demoed.
Oh.
Because it may or may not be worth keeping. That's all to be determined, but that's, and 112, if you look on here, is one of the big house. Yeah, next to railroad tracks, the old boxcar warehouse. Yeah, it's on the one on the west side, if I'm not mistaken.
And what do they use it for?
They use it for storage. I'm not sure what all they got in it. Do you know?
Aircraft storage.
They got parts in it, aircraft parts,
Okay.
bukus of aircraft parts.
Buku Airport.
It would take an effort to remove that material out of that building. I mean, it
You
would,
know what's in there? What they got?
707 DC-8 stuff mostly.
Are you kidding me? Doesn't that belong in a museum?
That is the museum for it now.
Oh,
So if you want to tour it, you can. But yeah, they've got a bunch of parts in there. I'm sure they have a rough inventory of it, but it's full, top to bottom. Like I said, if you had to pull everything out of it, that's a big.
I know that.
Big task in itself.
Well, I talked to, I went by and saw Steve Tuesday, and we were talking about this very issue on Tuesday before we found out about the TSA guys coming up. And that was going to be something we were sharing, but it's just, it's going to be a challenge.
There's no place on the airport other than the bus plant that could handle that material. Be the only place big enough, I think, that.
And then one of the other things that we're going to have that discussion on, and I anticipate here, is that if it has to be demoed, if it is not viable to keep, do we pursue building another structure?
Similar structure?
Well, not in shape, but a modern house.
Like a tilt up or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
something like that.
absolutely.
And then what's that going to cost and that kind of thing? And where do you put it specifically? And those kinds of questions. Lots to be determined. But I think this is kind of going to the point of your presentation here. This is one of the profound issues I think we have got to address. It's the whole issue of what do we really have out there and what kind of shape is it really in? And at what point does it become inappropriate to keep fixing it up? I think that's one of our major concerns we've had for quite a while. At least I have.
Well, odds are it probably has asbestos and mold in it now, so it's probably got a building like that old, it's probably got asbestos in it. Wouldn't you think?
Yep.
So if you were going to go in and clean the mold out, you'd probably have to abate the asbestos. So it's better to plow it over and put it in the landfill.
We don't put asbestos in our landfill.
Oh, well, wherever you guys put asbestos.
We're not cleared for this.
Oh, okay.
Mr. Chairman, in that light, do we have because I don't know, do we have a product that identifies each facility with its condition and infrastructure and size and lease rates? Do we have a product like that that's available?
A product, you mean with the information as far as the buildings, when it was made and the structure? And I have a spreadsheet. I don't know how current it is, but it does give me some information on all the buildings, the square footage, the construction of the building, square footage, and other
That's
information.
a year of building?
Mhm.
Oh, okay.
Some of them do, some of them don't have it, but I'm sure we could find the information.
Well, maybe while that's being conducted, maybe you can, or not you, but it can be updated as well. I just think it's a useful tool for
I'm trying,
our
yes.
friends like yourself and others, at least a lot of resources out there. So we know what they know what they have, and we know what we have, not that they don't know, but.
You're right.
Thank you.
And that's one of the things that I mentioned to Scott that I wanted to do is to update all that information because it also correlates with our insurance. So
Yes,
together to see that.
yes. And that's, it's kind of one of those more, it sounds weird, but mundane or basic things, but it's really one of the bedrock things that we're going to need to nail down so we know exactly what we got going forward.
Yes.
What's your timeline on moving towards completion of this project, Denise?
Well, once we get our positions filled and I can go back to my normal job, I can work with Steve and Scott and get things scheduled and go from there. It's been a little tight trying to get to do those things that are important. As I mentioned, the spreadsheet, having the information of the buildings and the construction and, as a property manager, that's important to have. So hopefully, can't give you a time, but it should be soon.
Thank you.
That's why it's being presented. You're welcome.
Okay.
Any more questions?
Nope.
Thank you. Moving on. New business, regular items. Amendments for property management plan, item number 8, Steve Christopher. The leases under $60,000 per year will be reviewed by the city manager.
Okay, this is a subject that, and let me jump in here because this is something that we've talked about, that Steve and I have talked about. Rather than, and I'm glad that Councilor Perry and Councilor Stubbs are here, rather than sending every single lease to the council, I would like to suggest that we consider recommending to the council that leases within less than 60,000 a year be within the purview of the city manager to just sign off on. As it is, we're voting on, for example, last council meeting voted on a bunker lease, which was what,
$300 a month, $3,600 a year.
Yeah, $300 a month. And it was a council action. I end up signing the lease. And is that really necessary? And part of the challenge here is I don't know. And counselors, I'm going to ask you guys, what's your thoughts on it? Your finance and legal? You have any thoughts on this, or do you want to chew on it for a while and consider it?
I have an immediate reaction, but.
Okay, go
I
ahead.
would prefer to chew on it.
Okay.
Mr.
I
Chairman,
just feel that council needs to be aware of what's going on. They need to have the opportunity to look at the lease and to discuss it. And so I prefer continuing to go to council, but most of them go on consent agenda anyway and are very seldom pulled.
Okay.
That was pulled last month.
Yeah.
But I understand what you're saying, that the city manager already has to approve expenditures of 60,000. So you're at.
Professional services agreements up to 60,000. Yes. And so this would just include it in there. Now, serious leases for buildings that, that would be different. But okay, understand. Councilor Perry?
I guess just on an initial reaction of just hearing about it now, my only concern is when you do have 10 councilors, even if it is just $3,600 a year, you have city assets that are being answered by the governing body that was elected.
Okay.
So my concern would be undue pressure on a manager by a single councilor or something like that if there was a situation. But there again, I'm open to listening and seeing where we're at.
Okay, well, ultimate authority would rest with the council whether to approve this or not, but you want to jump in here?
Just a question. What's the ratio? How many leases are we talking that are under 60,000 versus how many are over 60,000? What's the volume? Is it minimal or?
It is. In the time that I've been at the Air Center and looking at the different leases, it's not that many. You know, most of our leases are over that. And for instance, the one that we just presented, the bunker one, would be one that would fall into that.
Like T hangers or, like smaller.
Mhm.
Okay. Well, it's, we can either discuss this some more next month, or we can make a recommendation. And if nothing else, maybe we just hang on to this for another month and then talk about it next month and maybe make a recommendation one way or the other. There is a corollary issue here. I don't know if you have a slide for the next one or not. Okay, no, all right, because here's the other issue that Steve and I and actually Joe Neb have discussed. And we experienced this when Cavu bought Stewart, was that it occurred when in between council meetings, and the challenge was be able to reassign or be able to designate the new owner as the lease entity. In other words, Cavu buys all of Stewart. Stewart's name needs to be on the lease. Cavu's name needs to be on the lease so it moves forward for their insurance purposes, all that kind of thing. And if it falls we have to wait for city council action. So the other item that has been discussed is the idea of allowing the city manager to sign over a reassignment of a lease to a business if it's been bought out. I'm not saying that very well, but I think you get what I mean.
I understand it, yeah.
And then the council would have final approval at the next regularly scheduled meeting so that the new business can get, like I said, insurance, get the water bill in their name, the whole 9 yards.
It's an existing.
Electric bill, all those changed over to the new company name at the time of transfer. So that would be, I would suggest something we have prepared to discuss at the next council meeting. Next commission meeting. You have any thoughts, Mike?
I don't see why the city managers can't make that adjustment. And then I think depending on the lease rate, the city council will have to approve the lease because he can't approve the lease. So
No.
I would think within his jurisdiction, he should have that authority to be able to do that because it's just transferring a lease assignment.
And the idea is it's because the whole thing is being bought out.
Right.
And we saw this recently. Avex, when they bought a Mystic, that was the other example. Same exact thing. Getting all those details transferred over when they did.
Did it cause a delay? Did it cause a problem?
I don't think it caused a major problem. I don't remember what the ultimate resolution is. We're missing some key people today, and that makes it awkward for all of us. Because I have bits and pieces, but I don't have the whole story. But in the future, it could in fact cause a major delay. And I remember with the Stewart one, that was a serious concern when Stewart was selling to Cavu.
Well, sure. Put yourself in any of those business people's spot. You don't want to pay for a business not knowing you don't have the lease.
Yeah.
Those kind of go hand in hand, so it can hold up a transaction.
Yeah, I think the city manager can do a tentative approval contingent upon city council's.
Yeah, but would you put money up on a tentative, waiting on a city?
Nobody wants a
council?
contingency.
Good point. But how often does this happen too?
Well, we had it twice
Well,
in the last 3 years.
Yeah.
When did Cavu buy Stewart? 3 years ago?
About.
I'm thinking it was right. Yeah. So we've had.
What do other communities like us do? You know,
That's cute.
my already told her I was screwed up, so I
I
don't.
just think if everything is the same, nothing is changing in the agreement. It should just be a, you know,
That you're,
because what if you bought it and then the city council says, oh, no, we don't approve it.
Yeah, that's a problem.
And putting on my business hat, I'd say no transaction till the city council approves.
well, what we would ultimately have to do is the council would have to adopt the resolution authorizing the city manager to do those kinds of transactions. So that would ultimately be in the same thing as with the 60,000. So councilors, do you have any thoughts on this?
Mr. Mayor, I would think if we have to authorize a resolution, we might as well do the transaction. I mean, I don't know. I don't know what you mean by authorize a resolution.
Do a resolution to authorize the city manager to reassign lease to the new owner of the business. In other words,
Specifically or generically?
generically,
Oh.
when a business like what happened with Avex when they bought Mystic, to be able to, if it's a business is bought out, if a leaseholder is bought out at the air center, allow the lease to be transferred to the new owner of the company.
Does the
Without
city
change.
manager have this authority in any other context? Are we just talking about the air center?
Because we don't do any other buildings that we lease out that I'm aware of.
Well, we have the test facility and we have other facilities.
But we do have, okay, we have that one.
But if I could say,
Sure.
I don't, in a situation like this, I think that makes sense. That if you have someone that's looking to purchase out, for instance, the Mystic situation, for the council to authorize the manager to have the ability to do so. However, I think that resolution would need to be worded that he has the ability to, not that he has to. If he chooses, you know what, because what the next business may be bringing to Roswell may not be, their business plan may be different. They may be taking over what they've got in hopes of selling what they've got and bringing something totally different in. That can very well happen as well. So as long as he has the ability to, but not the required action to, that makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ultimately, the resolution or the delegation of authority to the city manager rests with the governing body. What I'm looking to just bring out here is the discussion on the concepts, and that this body makes no recommendation one way or the other to the council on what to do in the future, and the council will have to act. If the council doesn't want to, then we might have to do things like call special city council meetings just for that one item. That's the kind of, but
And on that, that's sort of what we were elected to do. You know, I know some people think that the city council should have to meet at one time of month, but we're actually one of the very few cities that does that. You know, there's a lot of cities who meet bi-monthly, different things. So, but either way on that, I don't think that I have a problem with the city manager having the ability to act on that on not only the air center, but with any of our facilities.
good point.
So.
Good point. All right. Anything else on discussion on this one? This one I'd like to, on these two items, what I'd like to do is as this body here, next month we'll either say go forward or not. Make a recommendation to the council and the council can decide. Okay. All right.
Okay, now we have a parking fee reviews. Item number 9, Steve Christopher. Create a policy for review of parking fees.
Another one of the discussions was that I think we went close to 10 years without a change in our parking fees. And do we have a built-in CPI on parking fees?
I don't know.
Okay. I don't think we do.
I don't believe we do.
So the question is, how often do we want to review those? And, once again, this is a topic for discussion right now. I mean, like, I think 10 years was way too long. Do we need to do it every year or every 3 years? I don't know. That's kind of what I like to throw down on the table for discussion.
I think in any business, you need to review your fees once a year at least.
Okay.
I would say that would be acceptable.
Not just the parking fees, probably fueling and, I mean, some of the other things.
Well, you hit on a good point there. Because we went through a lot of work, what, a year ago?
Yeah.
To try to address all those. And just because we look at them doesn't mean
Branding.
they change.
Mhm.
But, okay.
Fees might need to go up or down. They don't always have to go
They're
up.
gonna go down. But yeah, I mean, it might as well be all the fees, an assessment, every 2, 3 years, not just parking fees.
Okay,
Hey, can I ask a question?
sure.
So what are the current parking fees right now?
Ooh. They vary. I'm not sure. I don't handle that report, so I'd hate to even give you a ballpark figure of what they are.
I think there's 5 categories of aircraft based upon FAA standards, and the highest, I think, $14. Yeah, and the highest is 14, I think, right?
It is.
Yeah, that's $14 at the largest.
So, my thought in that is there's always the ability of just looking at it every other year or something like that. But, if you do create the position of a CPI, that may not sound like a whole lot, if you did a 3% on $14 a day.
Well, let's figure that out.
But 3% on $14 a day times how many you got out there versus that adds up to money that you're losing out on in a 2-year span, trying to catch up with something the next year.
42 cents.
And so to me, that's pretty significant. So I would much rather, I know that we did that many years ago when they wanted to lynch all of us when we upped the water rates. But we added in the increases, the yearly step increases to keep another council from having to go through a 20-year water rate increase. They hadn't been touched in 20 years. That's when they'll find you. Where if it's on a yearly moving up and it's just what it is, and they know what they're expecting, they're able to budget ahead of time. As a company, they know what they're looking at for future. I just think that's the better way to go.
Okay.
I just found the resolution that we had, if you wanted to see all that. I don't know if that was our final version that was adopted, but that was the resolution that we had come up with parking fees and landing fees. It doesn't say anything about when they'd be adjusted.
That's right up. And when did we actually, when was the date on that?
It doesn't say.
Yeah, it was just.
I think it took effect January 1 of this year, right?
This year, it's correct.
Right. No,
I think if you added a percentage or CPI, whichever is greater, is the better way to go. That allows you to where if the CPI is not quite high, you at least have a higher rate to be able to go to, but if CPI is greater, we get that extra bonus and add it. That's just my opinion. But
That's
Okay.
consistent with the leases as well.
Yes, I was thinking that too. The lease language says that.
correct. One of the things I'm inclined to do, and this, is not to do an increase at this time for January of 22, because we made such a significant increase last time because we hadn't done one in so long. But I'm thinking that a year from now, or we make it a policy that starts, say, with January 1 of 2023, there'd be the cost of living increase that way. That's just my thought, and I don't know what you guys are thinking of that. I mean, and I agree with what you're saying, Counselor, about the,
Also a thought with that, most companies are, not all, but most companies go off of a fiscal year starting in July for most. So maybe that's something you adopt now that goes into action, just like like with a lot of statutes, different things they're used to. July 1 start, that gives them the rest of this year and 6 months into next year at the regular rate. That's just a thought.
okay. Well, let's chew on this one some more, and we'll strive to have some kind of a definitive recommendation to the council at the next meeting. But these are the kinds of discussion, and I like your point about what are all the fees. So Denise, why don't you add that in there for the next month? We'll do look at a policy for all fees and keep it simple and, I would argue, predictable.
Okay.
That's going to be, that's critical, I think, for all of our customers out there. Anybody else on this? No? Okay. I'll get to you, Larry. All right.
Okay, moving on. Physical projects review, item number 10, Steve Christopher. Physical projects will go through infrastructure committee.
This is a request from Councilor Roebuck that infrastructure committee look at actual infrastructure projects. I think it's a legitimate request because, you know, the city council committee on infrastructure oversees all infrastructure projects citywide. And I think that needs to be referred to or discussed at those locations. And this would be, of course, the water line and the large hangar project are the two we currently have in the works. Any other thoughts or discussions on that? Councilors? Anything?
Again, just a quick thought on it. I do know that airport staff has voiced at least to me concern about the inordinate amount of time they spend reporting to the commission, to whatever, and how much additional time it would take for them to be reporting to different committees.
Okay.
And my personal thought is probably more than anything, whatever committee it is, the airport should, because it's an enterprise fund, because it is inclusive of so many things, needs to be dealt with in one place.
But we don't do that to water. We talk about water projects in infrastructure and in finance.
Well, I think when finance makes sense.
But it's also an infrastructure project. And it's part of the building of the facilities in which
But
it's.
finance and infrastructure at the airport, comes from different sources. It comes out of their own budget and has to be massaged in their own budget, which of course is part of the city's budget. But I just don't like breaking up an enterprise fund or zone, I guess is what I'm saying. Because I think needs to stay together. And again, I worry a lot about staff's time.
Okay, Counselor.
Let me put it in a little bit of a different way. This came up a number of years ago when I was first came on the council. I was chair of the airport committee. And then Jimmy Craig came on to the council and I took over what was called Buildings and Lands Committee. And then Jimmy became the airport committee chair. And Jimmy and I talked and discussed quite a lot because there were 10 committees. There's all this stuff going on everywhere. And we all recognized at that point that even though there were buildings and lands at the airport, and the airport strictly could just deal with what's inside the fence, it was all agreed upon because of the fact that it was the enterprise and everything was tied together, that it was best to keep those things out of buildings and lands and to keep it strictly with what we call the airport committee at the time. So I guess my concern comes to situations like when you're dealing with infrastructure, you have a lease that goes now through, is that lease going to stay in legal? If the lease stays in legal, so now you have, well, let's take a situation when Mystic had the facility and they had a boiler that needed to be replaced and they wanted to do remind me the terminology, an abatement. So that's, that's an infrastructure situation, could potentially be, or we've had water line situations, gas line situations, we've dealt with abatement. So now that lease, does that lease now move over to infrastructure to renegotiate within that lease for those things? Because if it is an infrastructure, now that lease is bouncing back and forth between committees.
See, that's not the kind of things I'm foreseeing. For example, the water towers. The 2 water towers that were built out there were handled by the water department, which were handled by the city engineer, which were infrastructure projects. The city engineer oversaw that construction. Right now, we have a water line design going that is being managed by the city engineer in cooperation with Armstrong. Those are major infrastructure projects. And I would argue the same thing with the large hangar. Because we're talking about moving water lines, sewer lines, power lines. Those are all infrastructure related assets that, building maintenance or building repair or rent abatements is not in the same category that I foresee this. But I'm concerned about major investments by the city in being managed or overseen by the company, infrastructure, because they're infrastructure projects. I mean, we do the same thing like for the bridges and the roads. That's the kind of vision I have. But what you're talking about there, I don't see that needing to go to infrastructure. And on the issue of rent abatements, I think we're trying to get away from those. We're trying to avoid rent abatements.
Sure, we've always tried to avoid rent abatements, but that always seems to wiggle its way back in somehow. I guess I just get, I don't see a problem with infrastructure working with legal or legal working with infrastructure. If airport ends up going to whatever that may be. But I don't know. I'm still trying to wrap my head around how we separate all of that out. Because I see a lot of entanglement in there, I guess. Is my only question.
Okay.
And I feel bad because I came mainly to listen, not to speak, but more or less hear what the philosophy was behind it.
And one of the issues with this water line going along to the east side is that it's going to tie into water customers outside of the city, outside of the airport. Those customers too. That's going to be part of this major water line project that, like for example, the Edgewood project that was discussed at council meeting by the city engineer at last council meeting. That's a similar type project, only it's not at the airport. It's over here across Garden. So anyway, nothing we're going to decide here today, but that's a.
Maybe I can talk to you.
Sure.
Maybe we'll have to roll up and get it there.
Sure. Sure. Okay. All right. We're actually whipping through this as Commissioner Call had requested. You said you wanted us to be brief.
Well, compared to last month.
True.
Okay, moving on. Commission comments for future agenda items.
Okay, so I see the 3 items under new business reappearing next month. And also in August, I believe we had asked Armstrong to give us an update on the water project.
You mean the water line that's going around somewhere?
Yeah, around to 1066 right now.
I was going to go across the airport?
No,
down here. On
it's
the-
going to go, I think it's going to go around the end of the
Yeah.
runway.
Yeah.
Come like in.
Right.
Oh, wow. I thought it was going to go way out here.
No,
No, we don't have enough money for that.
not for that price tag.
Yeah. Yeah, no kidding. Also, I will ask that we have, I got notified, was it 1.6 million, I think, in, for the airport and some of this economic relief fund. Yeah,
American Rescue Plan.
American Rescue Plan.
Mhm.
I don't claim to fully understand what we can spend that 1.6 million on. So maybe we can get a briefing on what the options are.
Doesn't the city manager have a tentative plan to present to the council on use of those funds?
We've got others too. We got the main, I got the 11.7 million, but this was a 1.6 million specifically for the airport.
Mr. Mayor,
Sir,
I was going to say I was in a meeting this morning with Juan Fuentes and with Jamie Davies, and we've already discussed that as soon as we get this final budget done, that the first thing we're diving into is trying to get a good, strong understanding where each of these pieces of the pie go, so that there's borders, if we could say, as to what we recognize and understand fully. So we're going to be talking about that in finance, so that may help.
sure. Now, but like I said, this particular one is an allocation for the airport.
Right.
And it's not for the general fund. It goes exclusively to the air center.
Right.
So,
And there's going to be a lot of that. So, that's where we wanted to get everything in its squares so we could see exactly how much is going to be in each one of those squares. So,
Mhm. because yeah, we got the 11.7 million, and the 5 million CARES. Anyway,
And Scott may have thoughts about that 1.6 already in his
yes, I agree.
process. We need to,
And then probably an update, because at this point, as we've talked about, the surveying will be done. So the Ascent large hangar project, put that on the agenda as well, kind of a status update. Oh, I know what we haven't discussed is the council approved the contract or approved for the city manager to do final negotiation with Mead and Hunt for the air service consulting. So status on the air service consulting contract next month.
that contract is effective. I don't know.
Soon as he signs, well, what it is the council says, yes, the RFP, the procurement process identified Mead and Hunt as the winner.
Correct.
City manager, you're authorized to do final negotiations. Once you could do that, you sign the contract, bam.
Mean Hunt is currently, are they still under contract? They were under the previous contract. Are they still under contract currently this time, or
I don't know.
is it going to be a continuing?
I don't know if it's expired yet or not.
The reason I bring it up, Mr. Chairman, is the work that we did with the Denver flight, with Mead and Hunt, with the airlines that
Yeah.
have been part of. It'd be nice to have an update on kind of where that's heading now, especially post-COVID.
I
If
agree.
they're still in the queue with the current contract, because I don't know when that contract is
And that's,
overlapping or ending.
okay, so we'll find out all that. We'll get an update on that because they're all legitimate questions. Let's find out exactly where we're at. Because you're right. And you're kind of reading my mind because I'm thinking the same thing. My perception is that we've been kind of on hold till we got the contract resolution and before we go back to the plate with Denver. So now that, well, hopefully now we've got that resolved, we can go forward. But that's got to be done. Any thoughts there?
I'm free.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else I'm missing that we want to?
Strategic planning.
Strategic planning. Yes. Because we were, and in the sense of the master plan too, strategic/master plan, because we're going to be doing that starting January, I think, is what the original schedule was. But we need to do some conceptual stuff on that. So we'll have a discussion on strategic plans.
Sooner the better, Mr. Chairman. It's been how many years?
Yeah.
And
Yeah, it's been
Yeah.
many years.
You know, and whether we want to hire someone to do that or whether we think we can do that in-house.
Well, I think Armstrong is, well, here's the question. The quote strategic / master plan. How are they the same and how are they different? I don't know if they are different.
I think it's the same.
I think they're the same. And we got Armstrong is actually on the hook, I think, to do the master plan for 22, if I'm not mistaken. Because they did it in 12.
Mr. Chairman, the reason I say the sooner the better is because it's in fairness to the staff. They need a sense of direction. And if we wait 6 more months to give them a starting point, then it's going to be another 6 more months before we implement it. So we're talking
I
years.
still have the presentation from September of 2019. So that tells you at least that long.
I know. Yeah, well, we will. I think one of the key things we got to do is identify exactly what do we have, where are we going? And by that, I mean, one of the things that I think, and this is what I took away from last month's meeting that really stuck with me, was Mike Garcia's comment about this is a Part 139 airport. And when the FAA looks at it, they only look at it as a 139. In reality, we are much more than that. We are an MRO, we are a storage, we are a test facility. And 139 issues got in the way of the test options. I remember that a year ago, there was some additional testing that one of the manufacturers wanted to pursue that the FAA nixed because of the perceived potential impact on scheduled air service. But if you look at the overall economic activity of this airport, scheduled air service, while critical, is a small portion of the mix. And so that's part of the, to me, part of this discussion we need to have is what are we? Go ahead.
Well, but in terms of the FAA, that's what they're looking. I mean, that's the priority for them.
Yes.
Regardless of what else we say, right? That's going to be their priority.
And, you know, Scott's part of a team, and this is a group that's exploring this. And the idea would be, I mean, one of the concepts is it time or is there a need to recognize that we don't fit the mold. We are something very different from other air centers.
Does the airport have like an airport operations manual that complies with Part 139?
Yes.
Okay, then in that manual is submitted to the FAA for
Approval.
yeah, acceptance approval, yeah.
So we did that
So
last,
that manual,
that was last year.
It's like
We actually did, what do we call it? There's 2 documents that got approved.
in that manual, if you have other operation requirements that fall under Part 107 for drone operation, whatever, that needs to be addressed in that manual that's supplied to the FAA.
Air Center minimum standards and general rules and regulations. That was the 2 documents we,
That's what the Air Center writes and tells the FAA, this is how we operate. So there's no rhyme or reason why you can't expand that to the areas you want to cover. You can say, we want drone operations. Here's our policies for drone, Part 107, blah, blah, blah. We comply here. It doesn't have to just fall under 139.
which is kind of the point that
It's in there.
drone operation.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
What I'm saying is we can expand the airport's operations to cover the compliance, because the feds just look at your manual and say, you're not doing this, 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 and this, you're out of compliance.
So going to the strategic plan discussion for next month is that let's go ahead and start chewing on it now so that when we come in here next month, I'll call on each of you for your thoughts.
Okay.
If that's okay. On kind of the mission vision concept.
Mr. Chairman, do you think we should add any discussion about industrial space outside the fence to replace some of the maybe archaic warehouse space we have?
I think that's fine. Add that.
With that, or is that part of building or physical projects review? I mean,
I would put that in there, physical projects review, but make sure that that's understood that that's,
like tilt up warehouse space or something, because if, these buildings are to the point where they are functionally obsolete, then
I heard somebody use that term once before.
I speak the language.
I heard that.
I feel that way when I wake up in the morning. I'm functionally obsolete.
You know what fixes that? Coffee,
Coffee.
large quantities of coffee,
New big hangers.
big hangers. Yes, that's exactly right. Yeah. Okay. Anything else?
Just something that has come to my mind that maybe I'm aware of, it may want to consider speaking about coming up very quickly. The legal committee is going to be hopefully adopting a cannabis ordinance.
Yeah.
That as we work through this, we have to work through this through zoning. And just FYI, as it looks like we're going to be dealing with commercial too and industrial as well. So that's going to affect the zone, the area around the airports, just to make y'all aware. Well, I'm not thumbs up, but just making sure y'all are aware that that's going to be potentially, depending on whatever council decides, that's potentially something that y'all want to be discussing soon.
I would like to encourage, I'm glad you brought that up because as far as I know, and correct me if I got this wrong, FAA still has a very dim view of AMP mechanics testing positive for.
I sure hope they haven't.
So what I would suggest is in the ordinance on zoning, some definitive distance from an air, the fenced area of the air center.
Here's an interesting thing, and I don't want to go into too much detail on it, but and Judy may be able to answer this a lot better than me because she's spoken with AJ at the municipal league much more than I could. But my conversation with AJ, what was passed by legislators from around our state has really tied the hands of municipalities in a significant way. They've even taken churches out of the ability of having distance from the church.
It doesn't explicitly say you can't, it just doesn't say you can.
So as we look at it, it's going to be one of those things I'm willing to try.
I agree.
But I don't think that we need to just think that we'll have something foolproof. This ordinance, we don't like to do things this way. At least I was for myself. I like something that's foolproof when we wrote the sexually oriented business ordinance. I wanted something that was approved, that we could represent to other places in the state as well and to adopt. And then we had something foolproof and it's proved to be but it took a long time. We don't have time on our hands this time. September 1, they get to start applying for these licenses. And if they start applying, they've already purchased land, they're already making improvements to the facility. It's going to be hard in a court of law to go back and fight that. So we're having to quickly.
Okay, there's one, and this is a relatively arbitrary number, but I would say no distribution within a half mile of an FAA controlled area.
We're looking at a reasonable number that has been utilized in the state of California that has proven acceptable as a quarter mile. Half mile has been argued, from what I understand, in the state of California and has failed.
Okay.
Quarter mile has seemed to hold up. So, but I too, you're going to have to start looking more at the concerns of the manufacturing, the plants, the growth facilities.
Well, you've also got
Probably more, you can still have, the pot shops is what I'm calling them, in I-2, but but we're also looking at a floating zone. And anyway, it's a lot of new stuff that's new to us that we're going to attempt. And unfortunately, we don't know how far we're going to really be able to, but we're going to try it, test the waters and see what we can do.
Well, we also have a school down there too, and you're allowed to exclude from the school.
Yeah, we have an early college, high school, university high.
Yeah, we have, university.
In Sydney.
Quarter mile's only the other side.
Well, the state is saying
And I live.
300 from a school is
You know, the
reasonable.
National Law Enforcement Cab.
So,
State is saying that's a lot less than a quarter mile.
but we're working on some things. We're trying to see what, you know. So anyway, but I just didn't want to bring all of it. Just let y'all know.
Yeah.
Don't be surprised if someone gets called and says, so y'all are going to start letting them do this. Well, what are you talking about? Well, yeah, you know, these are the places that seem to be
We're
accepted.
putting in a lot of stipulations and calling them overlays
Yeah,
into the floating.
correct.
So I think we're okay. We have not talked about the FAA. regulations, but that's a good.
Yeah, so that to bring it up in our next,
Yes, please do, because you do not want to encourage consumption of these substances to airframe and power plant mechanics.
Well, yeah.
Anybody touching a plane or pilots, yeah, anyone,
Well, see, I think that's what our concern is locally and in discussing again with municipal league and some other resources. Is we're just trying to get the basics in this right now because the state is obviously going to have to be revisiting their statute and which causes the rippling effect. But like Councilor Perry just said, the statute makes it a little difficult for municipalities to do what we
Are there
believe is right.
any statutes with the medical facilities? I mean, can you just not mimic those?
no, unfortunately, the way that they modeled this, there's so much separation. I'm not convinced that the state even knows what they've got on paper yet. I think they're still trying to figure out what's been passed. And I don't think that the timelines that they've laid out are going to be reasonable. But we have to be prepared that September 1, so we'll be holding a special legal committee meeting
And council.
and then council meeting directly after to try so that we have the time to advertise for a public hearing.
We've already got those set.
okay,
So
all right.
it's just so y'all know.
Just one other thing to remember, the New Mexico Rehabilitation Hospital is sitting right there.
And I've already put that in there. I was very clear that we wanted rehab. That's exactly right. You don't want somebody leaving. That's like having a Weight Watchers next door to a Baskin Robbins. No. It doesn't work. You don't want that.
I'm thinking of
Maybe
putting
it's our
next to a
message.
Golden Corral is what I was thinking.
But you know what I'm saying? So you want to be, so we actually put rehabs in there as well.
Yeah.
And not just rehabs medical, but also like you got the Dry Harbor, which is a alcoholic anonymous type thing. You wouldn't want to have a liquor store next door to the Dry Harbor, even though it's not necessarily medical. It's still a facility that is trying to.
Right.
Okay,
So we're trying to set a good example that maybe the state will get, sure they haven't had one.
all right. Anything else, Council? Oh,
We're dealing with that.
We're dealing with the growing.
okay,
So anyway,
Commissioner.
Mr. Mayor, can we go back to the strategic plan?
Sure.
I don't want to wait another month and talk about it again. I would like to maybe see the staff come up with some recommendations for us because I don't want to waste another 30 days saying, yeah, we really need to do that. When we already know we need to have it done.
Okay,
Maybe we just need a recommendation by staff on how they want, or they should see that we should proceed because I just hate losing more time. It's just my thoughts.
okay. And what?
So I think it's agreed. We all know that we need one.
What do you want staff to provide?
A recommendation on if we need a hire or go local, and increase and some type of timeline.
Okay,
They know they're working with Armstrong with the master plan on that timing. So they need probably, because they're going to own the plan. They need to have a say on how it's developed and when it should be. So I think they should recommend us what they would
well,
like.
do you want to have Armstrong present on what they're planning to do for the master plan that's required for the FAA? See what that product is. No, that's not it. The 2012 master plan that's going to be replaced with the 2022 master plan.
I think letting the airport,
Yeah,
I think Scott Stark be involved.
that's what we talked about last month.
Work with Armstrong as he does already.
The same thing
I
is,
think
I
determine
believe it is.
how they want to present that.
I mean, he came down a year and a half ago and talked all through how the process would work,
Mhm.
elements,
True.
and the FAA had the whole book on it.
Mm-hmm. So the question becomes then, with forms, very good. So
pictures?
what we want to do is what? What specifically are we asking staff to come forward with? A timeline and a recommendation on
How to proceed.
how to proceed.
Well, I think there's been some discussion that it would happen in-house. Like Scott, has talked about that the staff and some of us can, I mean, that there's been some talk that we don't necessarily need the professional direction, and I think we do.
And I'm a little concerned about staff having enough time.
Right.
I don't think we have enough
Or
time.
us, for that matter.
I'm not asking them to do a strategic plan for next month. I'm asking for a recommendation on how to proceed and with a timeline on how, so we have an actual plan on how to get there.
No, and so just so we understand, let me back up. My understanding is we are required to have a master plan for the FAA, but that is different from, or is it different from a strategic plan?
Yes.
Well, just in my experience, again, a master plan is talking about facilities. It's a separate item from a strategic plan.
Mhm.
But I don't know what the FAA guidelines are. I can look and see.
So maybe that's a bit more basic question. Do we need a master plan and a strategic plan? In other words, a document prepared for the FAA next year, will that suffice as the strategic guidance that we're talking about for this air center?
I don't know the elements of the requirements for the FAA for the master plan, so I don't know whether it'll encompass what I'm accustomed to seeing in a strategic plan with priorities and, goals and objectives and all those type of things that lays out a actual structure on a path forward.
And I would imagine that it's been a while since I looked at the 2012, and I don't have that one with me here, but the issue of the direction of the the purpose of the 2012 strategic master plan, not strategic plan, master plan.
So the FAA says airport master planning means the development for planning purposes of information and guidance to determine the extent, type, and nature of development needed at a specific airport. Which again, to me, sounds more like facilities than it does, a strategic plan that would be talking about the business and the buildings and everything else that we would want to project into the future.
We talk a lot about facilities when we talk about terminals, we talk about parking lots, we talk about, a whole variety of things that probably don't fall within the scope of a master plan. And I think those are the areas that a strategic plan really encompasses, kind of like the meat hunt and the delivery to Denver. That's normally not in the master plan. That's going to be in a strat plan as part of the mission of the organization. What do we hope to achieve? What are we going to achieve? And what will we achieve? And you outline that structure so staff has a path forward on where the direction is every day.
Well, we're getting a little bit into it, but let me throw out what's been on my mind in this sense is that when I go back and looked at the 2012 master plan, in a huge section about developing the southeast part of the air center for reusable launch vehicles. That was a big part of it. In 2011, when they were first, that was the talk. There is like a portion of one paragraph about MRO in that 2012 document. And where I'm going with this is that the complete inability for anybody in this room or in this world to know what aviation will look like. So my question is, what are we planning? What are we trying to plan for And I would argue that what we have to plan for is maximum flexibility by having the best facilities and infrastructure to be able to accommodate what comes down the road in 5 years. For example, the simple thing like the water towers and the water system and the power system, and the point that Matt's making about, warehouses that are modern and being able to, and so I'm thinking like, what's our plan is to have modern, functional, not obsolete, functional structures for usable by our tenants, whomever they may be, doing whatever it is in aviation they might do.
Yeah, inside and outside the fence.
But what I'm saying there is just my thoughts, and I'm not, I just don't see us being able to know, well, in 10 years, we're going to be doing X. Because we don't know. I mean, look at Sky. Sky came out of the blue. Blue Sky. Sorry. But Sky came out of, and where does Sky in 2 years or 5 years?
Well, again, the strat plan is it's a plan and it's a living document. And it grows and develops, and it's something you review and work through. Because from the strat plan, then you create your tactics, the inside and outside the fence. I mean, all those pieces. But the strat plan is that overarching piece. It kind of gives you a basic focus and direction where you're headed. And that the tactics is.
But that's where I'm going at is the objective here, what I just articulated, to have modern, viable facilities that can be used by tenants. What is that? Is that the right approach?
Well,
I'm not saying it is. Huh?
That's what has to be decided.
That's right.
Okay.
That's what's in the plan. That's what we have to develop. And it's really kind of like creating your priorities. What do we want to be when we want to grow up in 10 years?
What I'm getting is we don't know what we're going to be in 5 years because the industry is changing so radically.
Well, yeah, but that's not unique to us.
No, it's not. So where I'm going is like, but like 112. Does 112 get replaced?
If you replace 112 with a modern warehouse facility, same shape, you could.
I know, but you're getting into the weeds. Like that's too minuscule of a. We're talking about.
That's tactics, right? That's the tactical piece. That's when you get down in the weeds. So.
Yeah.
Okay, so the better question is, do we replace all buildings over 70 years? I'm just asking.
I don't know.
Oh,
Part of the planning.
over 70 years old or over the next 70 years?
No, over 70 years old.
Oh, well, and Amy's right. That's part of the plan that needs to be developed.
I think each building has to be evaluated for its functionality. If it's just something that is obsolete, plow it down and put something that can be used there.
So, all right, going along that line, then how about this? So every building gets independently evaluated. A value is established. It has a certain value right now. The maintenance or the repair costs are what percentage of its current value.
Mm-hmm.
If it exceeds a certain threshold, then it's marked for demolition and replacement.
Mm-hmm. Once replacement can be obtained. I mean, if the building's being used, but it should be replaced, why would you tear it down if it can't replace it?
But if you say, for example, if it's not usable because of mold.
Well, then that becomes an environmental condition and you take it down for that purpose. Yeah, I get that, I mean.
You're getting way too ahead.
Okay.
It starts here and goes like this.
Okay.
You're already down here.
All right. Let's have the discussion next month with input from staff as requested. Okay. All right.
I would recommend going back and looking at this.
You did that very well.
Is that available?
Yeah, we got it somewhere.
Or this lovely copy available through the FAA.
Did you learn that in law school?
What, this?
Your Honor.
No, but I do keep things for days like this when we need them.
I know, I got them in my desk.
Okay, well, this is valuable. I mean, mostly because he came and spent an hour discussing this with us and we didn't do anything with it.
No, we didn't. All right,
And the value is still there.
agreed.
Denise, could you have that sent to the folks? I've not seen that. I know that existed, so maybe.
It was a presentation that Armstrong came down and did.
Maybe
Back
just
in,
copy
yeah.
and send it to us or something.
And is that for commercial airports or general? General aviation.
GA. GA.
May not be a big enough book for us.
There we go. All right. Anything else we want to do? All right, if not, I'll go to public participation. Larry?
I'm going to stand up this one.
Oh, Lord.
Larry Connolly, 2815 in Canton. Parking fees. My last job in private business was a publicly held courier company. We had like 1,500 contracts going all the way. Wells Fargo was over $1 million a year. The 3 different Federal Reserve districts over $1 million. And we had hundreds and hundreds of contracts with companies that they're $720 a year, $60 a month. We went through this deal. Do you do it at the first of the year? Fiscal year? We took a survey. 80% of our clients were on calendar year. We switched to doing our rate increase for fiscal year. Going to our deal be like July 1. And we found out our cancellation rate went down from 5% to less than 1%. And it all had to do, we told these companies that we're going to have a rate increase July 1. But we told them back in like August so that they could work on their budgets. So what they did was they said, well, we'll put your rate increase in on January 1 in our budget. So we had a little extra slush fund coming on July 1, and it worked perfectly. And having it in July 1 in the middle of the year also allowed them, we could, instead of having a 3.5% increase, we had like 3 3/4 and had no problem. If we had done it in January, a rate increase in January, cancellation rate was 5%.
Interesting. Anything from Aircel? Anything else, commissioners, counselors? Great.
Oh,
So-
one thing,
All right.
how the hell, I was here at 10 o'clock, 10:30 this morning,
Mhm.
and no one mentioned that we're switching the meeting down here.
Sorry.
Larry, I'm just kidding.
What it was is there's a sign down at the Air Center.
Yeah, we found the sign, I found the sign at the Air Center, but
Well, I didn't learn about this transfer till yesterday afternoon. That's when I got hit with it. Yeah.
I was told to contact the members. I apologize.
All right, I've got
And you did a good
240,
job of it.
248. So we'll call it adjourned and we'll be back in August. Our August meeting is the 19th, August 19th.
Is this going to be at the airport or here?
Yeah,
Yes.
back to the airport.
Okay.
All right, thank you all.
Thank you.
Amy, I saw your father-in-law yesterday at the barber shop. Looking good.
He's a dandy.
Hey, how was your, how was Mr. Lake's